I have been traveling on the road for over a year now, and today I'm going to talk about the things that surprised me, the downsides, the upsides, the do's and don'ts of solo traveling, and what I believe people should be aware of and should be prepared for when they go out on their own. Now, solo travel can and is often hailed as an amazing experience. And my situation when I started to travel was the following. I had just graduated university, and as so many people, wasn't really sure what I was going to do. I had been in the education system for 17 years, essentially a system with predefined goals, to-dos, and aims. And coming out of that, it's very, very difficult to figure out, well, without all that structure, what am I going to do next? I didn't have a clear direction, and so I decided to fulfill myself a childhood dream of traveling New Zealand in a van. Today, after more than 11 months, I am leaving New Zealand. And I wanted to reflect on the things that I've learned to hopefully give that away and pass that knowledge on. One of the things that I think surprised me the most about solo traveling is how much time you spend on survival tasks, figuring out where you're going to sleep, where your next meal is going to come from, what you're going to see next, where to go next, and in my case also how to earn money. But it wasn't so much the big choices that overwhelmed me. I mean that too, but it was the small decisions you've got to make every single day or every couple of days. Oh, okay, I'm now in this city. Where is the next city that I'm going to sleep in? What am I going to eat? Because, for example, for me, I didn't have a fridge in my van, so I couldn't store food. So I had to get groceries every couple of days. And all these small micro decisions, they take up a lot of headspace. And you don't really think about that when you're home because, well, when you're living in a flat, you have a shower, for example, which I didn't have. You have a bathroom. You you have a fridge full of food. And on a morning when you wake up, it is very likely that you know where you're going to go, what you can eat, and how you're going to spend the day at work, at school, etc., etc. And you don't have any of that. And these survival tasks take up a lot of mental headspace that you don't have available for other things. And that brings me kind of to the second thing, which is all these decisions that I mentioned before. Because you have no routine, immediately, often when you wake up, you have to start making decisions, and there's no part of your day that is really automated. And we don't really think about that, I believe, when we have a routine, because we just go through it. But for most people, a significant portion of their life essentially runs on autopilot. And often that's, like, we can think of this as a bad thing because it traps us in, like, monotony, but it's also a good thing and necessary even because it allows us to let our thoughts go and to not have to worry about how we fill every hour and not have to make a decision about how we fill every hour of our day. And this is something that we do have to do, or that I did have to do when I was traveling. I remember this vividly. One morning I woke up in my van. I just moved on to Wellington, the capital of New Zealand, and I woke up on the outskirts of the city. I didn't really have a plan. I didn't know what to do. And I woke up and I was like, shit, okay, I'm gonna have to find a bathroom, find a shower, get groceries, eat, decide what I'm gonna see today, then go see that. And I was just so overwhelmed with all the decisions that I had to make before I even got out of bed that I was just paralyzed, and I lay in bed and I was like, oh my God, what the hell is going on here? And this really, really surprised me how much headspace this actually takes. So much so that when I started a job and I started working for a couple of weeks, I was so relieved to wake up on a morning and know how my day was going to look like. Be prepared for that. You're going to find out that with all the negative things that I'm listing off to begin with, because I'm going to start off with the downsides, that all these essentially has a positive upside, but we're going to get to that later. Now, because you have so little routine, another thing that was very difficult for me personally was to work out and to stay creative. The working out part, I had anticipated that, so this wasn't really so much of a surprise. For a lot of people, you know, physical fitness relies on routine. You go to the gym in the morning, you go to the gym after work, after school, or you go for a run at lunchtime. And so not having access to a gym all the time made that more difficult. I think I managed quite well with, you know, running is always good because you literally only need your shoes and then calisthenics and bodyweight exercises, but it still makes it more difficult, especially if you move around and you can't store food. You know, eating healthy makes it more difficult. But this is a sacrifice that I was very much willing to make, and I think we're going to get to the topic of sacrifices later. But what surprised me more was how difficult it was to stay creative. And for me, that mostly meant filming and editing videos. And not having any sort of predictability, not having a routine, made it more difficult than at home and more difficult than I thought it would be to sit down and start getting into the creative process and start editing or start writing in any sort of creative endeavor. I thought, well, I'm going to have so much freedom. You know, I can create what I want when I want. But for me, it turned out that without the pressure, without some sort of time constraint, that it was actually quite difficult, which, yeah, surprised me. Maybe that's different for other people, but this is something that I definitely noticed. Another trade-off you are making when you travel is that you're gonna make it harder for yourself to maintain friendships. I know that a lot of people say, oh, you know, go solo traveling and you're gonna meet friends for life. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think in these months that I have traveled, between 1 and 3 people are people where I'll say, okay, these are maybe friends for life. And that's, you know, in a year. Is that a lot? Is that more than I would have otherwise had? I don't know. But I don't think that you're gonna necessarily meet friends for life because you move around so much. And if you are in a different city every couple of days, it is hard to form like strong bonds with people. What I have noticed is that when I have traveled with people that I knew already, so I traveled with a couple of friends that came to visit me or that were here by chance or something, it deepens those relationships. And you can go much, much deeper than you otherwise would have because you get to know people in new situations. But it is also more difficult to maintain the friendships you already have and to just build a social circle that supports you. And that might be okay for a while because you want to focus on new experiences. But when you need to do something or if you're someone who relies on a strong social circle, then after a couple months, this might really get to you. Now, the last thing that really surprised me was how difficult I found it to embrace the joy and the freedom and the lack of structure that comes with traveling full time. And if you're someone like me and you rely and you like measured progress in terms of grades, in terms of weights on the bar in the gym, or any sort of metric like that, then starting to solo travel or starting to travel full time in general is going to feel super strange. Because for me, after years and years in academia, where I took pride, in making progress and in doing well on, in school, in the gym, and on these kind of metrics, it was weird to not have a measure of progress and to not sit down at the end of the day and think, okay, check, I did all these things. But to think, oh my God, I had so much fun today. Like, these really cool things I saw. And what you're going to discover after a couple of weeks and months is that you make progress in a different way. You gain new experiences and you get to know yourself better, and you learn from different people that you meet along the way, and you learn things that you couldn't have learned had you, tried to go after them in a very structured, measured way. But these things aren't easily tracked on a spreadsheet or on a to-do list. You have to give yourself some time to actually go out and experience that. Having that lack of measurable progress can take a long time to adjust to. And a lot of times it may even look like the grass is greener on the other side. Like even when you're traveling and you're having fun, you might look at other people and be like, oh, but they're doing so much and they're working so much, or they're like making so much progress. Like, should I be doing that? Am I doing wrong because I'm not doing that? Like, am I missing out on progress I could make because I'm traveling? And obviously it's very silly because it's always a trade-off. Like, people who are working in that moment think, oh my God, he's traveling, he's living it up, and he's having so much fun. Am I missing out on life because I'm working? And what you've got to realize is that it's always a trade-off. There are no solutions, there are only trade-offs, is a quote that I've really learned to embrace over these last couple of months. And all the trade-offs you make and all the downsides you encounter while solo traveling also have their upsides. Because solo travel is also very good for a lot of things. Like, if you are mentally lost, or rather if you don't know what to do with your life, like I did and like many other people do, like after they graduate, I think solo travel is a good way not to quote-unquote find yourself, because I don't necessarily think you find yourself once and then, you have it all sorted out. But it is a good way and a good tool to broaden your perspective. When you come out of university, it is likely that the options you see before you are constrained by the courses you took, the people you hung out with, and the things that give you prestige and the things that look good on social media. Right? These are kind of the main things you have in mind. But when you travel and you talk to all sorts of people around the world, then you're going to find out that many people do all sorts of different things with their lives that make them very happy, that don't look good on social media and that you've never heard before. And that realization, the realization of how wide the spectrum of available and fulfilling options really is, that gives you a lot of ideas and a lot of you can take a lot of courage from that to do something non-traditional that still is the best thing for you at the time. Another thing that solo travel is definitely good for is becoming completely hyper independent, and that is in and of itself, I believe, a crazy superpower. Like, I believe you can drop me now in any country in the world with nothing but, well, provided I speak the language, sort of, but even that is, questionable. because you can just make your way with hands and feet and learn a lot. But you can drop me essentially in any country in the world where I speak the language with a phone, with a passport, and with enough money for a couple nights stay, and I'm confident that I would be able to build a life for myself in that country that I enjoyed. And I think this is a super powerful realization, because it gives you the self-confidence you need to know that you can start over at any point in your life, and you can start over, you can leave a situation that does not suit you, and you can go and find something that's better for you without needing permission, without needing approval. I'm not saying that it's always going to be easy, but you can do it. And this hopefully then translates into other areas of your life, and you think, oh my God, like if I did that, what else can I do? What else am I capable of? And you learn that because you are forced, as I mentioned before, you are forced to make all the decisions by yourself. This is why I said, like, these downsides that I mentioned, they often lead to good things, but the good things you can't get without having to go through that process. Traveling will also definitely boost your social skills, at least if you embrace the fact that you want to make friends or you want to meet people along the way. And if you're solo, then you really have no option other than approach people and other than talk to them. And I've noticed, I've heard from people that they've just become, more outgoing when they are traveling, because it's either talk to people or stay alone. And over a long enough time horizon, just getting over yourself and talking to people is much easier. So if you are someone that kind of struggles, with their social skills, and you can muster up enough courage to go traveling, and I'm not saying you have to do that for a year, but maybe just for a weekend getaway in a city alone. I think that's going to help you get out of your shell a bit, by force, definitely. I think the unifying theme among these couple good things I've noted is that it teaches you things that you can only learn through experience. There's no other way. And some of these lessons are things that you wouldn't have ever expected. I was working one day, and at 4:30 in the afternoon, a coworker who had been acting strange all day comes to me and says, "Hey mate, I gotta tell you something." And he kind of pulls me outside and says, "My girlfriend just had a miscarriage. We lost our baby." And it's like, well, how do you deal with that? How do you comfort him? How do you deal with his emotions, and how are you there for him? That's something you don't learn from a book. When you're laying in bed in the morning and you have no plan, you could fly home tomorrow, or you could move to another city, or you could just go on a walk. What do? How do you make that decision? What's your priority? You don't learn that from a book, you learn it from experience. If you arrive in a city and you have 2 weeks of savings and then you gotta make money, what do? Do you freeze? Or do you say, okay, let's get cracking, let's find a job, let's find a way to make money? What do? You don't find this out in a book. You have to live it. And this is especially for people like me who have been, in full-time education until they're like over 20 years old. I think especially for people like me, that's very important, because you get confronted with life and with people from all different socioeconomic areas as well, and with very different lived realities. And encountering that once, and yeah, leaves you not blind to it for the rest of your life. And you learn things that you're going to draw and nurture yourself from for a very, very long time. Now, summing this up, solo travel is gonna be a roller coaster. For me, the highs were highs and the lows were lows. You're gonna feel lost a lot of the time. You may feel lonely. You feel like you don't know what to do at times, but sometimes you just feel like your heart's on fire in the best kind of way, and you know that you remember moments or you live moments that you're going to remember for the rest of your life, and that is incredible. And with all the hard times, you can always ask yourself, if someone goes through what I'm going through right now, the loss, the confusion, if someone goes through that and they get out on the other side, what kind of person would they be? They would probably be someone who can deal with uncertainty better, who can make decisions more independently, who has more agency, who can deal with all sorts of people. And this sounds like the person you want to be, right? So, go through it. There's no other way. I'd also warn you to fall into the kind of travel dopamine trap. It is very, very easy to just chase the next destination, the next experience, without thinking of what the experience does to you or how it's going to change you. You're going to meet people who say, oh, you got to go there, and I've been there, and you got to go there. And you find yourself chasing destinations, and you arrive at the next one, and you're like, oh, cool, where next? When you lose this sense of why am I doing this, and how does this destination affect me, what does it do for me, and you just go for, okay, I'm going to see it, and it's not going to do anything else, I think you can just fall into this loop of just constantly chasing experiences without a deeper meaning. And at least for me, that would have been not a good idea. You also have to realize that if you're going to travel for a long time, it's a marathon. It's not a 2-week holiday that you pack yourself full of stuff. You're going to have down days. You're going to have days where you do less. You're gonna have to make time for maintenance, for visa applications, for insurance tasks, for these things that you don't really think about until they're there, for reflection just as well. And in the beginning I felt guilty for not having a crazy day, not having a crazy experience in a day, because I was like, oh my god, I'm traveling, I should have these amazing experiences every day. But if you're going to do that for a year, then give yourself some time and give yourself some grace. I think there's a learning curve, definitely. And one more very important thing is to leave some room for unexpected things to enter. Don't overplan, because you've probably noticed that the best stories, the most authentic, the realest, and the deepest experiences often come from things you hadn't planned, from things that were unexpected, that surprised you. And so, in a world with Google Maps, where it's easier to just plan every single step, it is good, or at least I find it good, to plan for things not to plan for things to go wrong, but to intentionally make space for serendipity and randomness to take hold. Go on a 5-day road trip without a map. Wander a day in a city without Google Maps. Try to meet someone in your hostel and go with them on a day trip. There are ways to introducing randomness, to introducing the thing that creates good experiences. And not over-planning definitely helps with that. One fear you might have is that when you leave home, when you travel for a long time, and you remove yourself from your old life, that things are going to go on without you and that you're going to lose touch. And yes, things are going to go on without you. But for me, that was a calming realization, because that means I can leave for a couple of months and like the world isn't going to go under. Nothing is grinding to a halt. I'm not going to be left behind. And so if in the future I need to focus on work for half a year, or I just need to take a couple of weeks to do something by myself, then I can do that. Finally, just for myself, I fulfilled myself a childhood dream coming here. And in a way, it's very strange, because what was once a dream, I have now lived, and it's going to become a memory. It's going to live in the past. But I'm okay with that for now, because I think I can genuinely say, well, I have enjoyed, I've lived it, I've enjoyed it, I've soaked it up. And it feels good in here when I think about it. Like every time I go back to a memory that I cherish, and not, only think about it, but try to live it, like immerse myself in it with the feelings and the sound and the energy that the moment had, I'm just full of gratefulness. And it just puts a smile on my face, and I'm so grateful that I have this treasure chest of experiences to look back on. Even knowing that it wasn't all well, often we tend to look back with rose-colored glasses on our experiences, knowing that it wasn't all well. I mostly remember the good stuff, and I'm quite happy about that. I hope this helped you, and I hope to see you next week.